title of this video is Raiders Remembered.
On April 18, 1942, a group of 80 brave American airmen took off from the deck of the aircraft carrier Hornet, in planes just like this one, on a one-way mission to retaliate for what President Roosevelt called a day which will live in infamy, the Japanese sneak attack on Pearl Harbor. 16 B-25 bombers, each with a 5-man crew, set off that stormy day to strike back at the very heart of Japan, Tokyo. This historic mission, that would later change the course of the war in the Pacific, was led by America's greatest pilot, Jimmy Doolittle. The men he led that day would later become known simply as Doolittle's Raiders. 3 Raiders made the ultimate sacrifice that day, and for the past 80 years the men gathered to pay tribute to their own. We invite you to join us as we introduce you to these true American heroes. Relive moments of the raid itself. Learn what the men were thinking before, during, and after the mission, and how they commemorate and celebrate in their private annual reunion.
There are 17 Raiders left now of the original 80. 9 of them are attending this reunion, so no goblets will be turned down. As their historian, I'm often asked about the origin of these goblets. They were given to the Raiders in 1959 during their reunion that year by citizens of the city of Tucson, Arizona. They were flown to the Air Force Academy afterwards and presented there by General Doolittle for safekeeping and display between reunions. They've been brought to each reunion since then by outstanding Academy cadets who have been selected for this honor.
Then flew out in an old C-47, got our briefings, and as we were coming back to our airplane, the other fellow with me asked the driver to take us to the Air Force Academy Museum. Well, at that time there was a small museum right by the main gate, and I asked him why he wanted to go, and he said that, well, I want to see our goblets. And I said, what goblets? What are you talking about? He said, well, I was one of Doolittle's Tokyo Raiders. His name was Dick Knobloch. And he said, they're on display here, and I want to see what they look like. So we entered this little museum, and there at the end of the room, under a beautiful blue light, were these 80 silver goblets. Some of them turned up, some of them turned down. And I asked him the story about that. And he said, well, every year these goblets are brought to the reunion site. We drink a toast to those who have gone. And if anybody has gone in the middle of the year between our reunions, then at that reunion we turn his goblet upside down. We have a very solemn ceremony.
Crew number 1, Pilot Doolittle, Co-Pilot Cole, Navigator Potter, Bombardier Raymer, Gunner Leonard. Crew number 5, Pilot Jones, Bombardier Trullo, Gunner Mance. Crew number 11, Pilot Rini, Bombardier Birch, Gunner.
I wish they were here to talk to because that generation, we're
were losing them so quickly. And the stories that they could tell, what they did, I think is important that people understand what they did. And I'm not sure everybody understands that concept. But the fact that they did something incredibly novel on an aircraft carrier and took off 200 miles farther out than they were originally supposed to, knowing full well that they probably weren't going to make it to the airfield in China. This demonstrates to me an incredible honor, courage, and really commitment to the cause. So when reading those names off, I wish that they were still here so that we could speak to them.
Lieutenant Colonel Richard E. Cole, co-pilot for Lieutenant Colonel Jimmy Doolittle.
After the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, President Roosevelt was hot on the trot to pay him back. And he kept needling the chiefs of staff. We've got to do something. And there was a Navy captain by the name of Lowe one day that was flying in a Navy airplane over Norfolk Naval Air Station. And he saw a B-25 take off of the runway. And on the runway were markings that the Navy has been using for their training. And he got the idea, I wonder if the U.S. Army airplane could take off from a carrier.
Tongshan Liu is an honorary raider who helped crews in their escape from the Japanese in China.
Their volunteer is a truly volunteer. You may have read or heard that when they were training in England, they were told, don't tell anybody, even your wife, what you're doing here. Now, they did not know they're headed for Tokyo until the carrier Hornet passed Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco.
Major General David M. Jones, pilot, crew number 5.
Were you scared when you jumped out? No, yes, you were.
Crew number 6, Lieutenant Colonel Chase J. Nielsen, navigator.
My pilot was one that was executed.
Crew number 7, Staff Sergeant David J. Thatcher, engineer gunner.
Hanging on and laying against Bombay, the back of Bombay.
Major Thomas C. Griffin, navigator.
Of course, we didn't very much think that when we took off, because I'm a navigator. And we weren't going to reach China. We were going to ditch someplace in China to see how they gas.
Master Sergeant Edwin W. Horton, engineer gunner.
And thoughts that I had when I took off from the carrier. I don't know, you concentrate pretty much on things at hand, you know, and don't look too far ahead. Or at least I did.
Colonel William M. Bauer, pilot.
You can have some thoughts about people that aren't here, and maybe to
see the couple, somebody that you knew well turned over. And every once in a while we see somebody that we hadn't seen for a long, long time. And that's helpful.
Then crew number 11 next, Lieutenant Colonel Frank A. Kepler, navigator.
You don't have to go if you don't want to. They said your chances of coming back on this project will be about 50-50.
Crew number 16, Lieutenant Colonel Robert L. Height, co-pilot.
Of course, I always feel a little sad by the moment of knowing the ones to those who have gone, you know, and we had been really a pretty close group of guys, and it's I think I always say a prayer of thanksgiving for the guy when they're gone.
Will now conduct the ceremony.
Well, for me, I don't know about other people, but when I read the names or listen to the names, immediately I visualize the individual and some of his mannerisms and you know who he was.
Normal roll call. Fellow Raiders. Crew number 1, James H. Doolittle. Henry A. Potter. Fred A. Franklin. Paul J. Leonard. Crew number 2, Travis Hoover. William N. Fuchs. Richard Carl Wilder. Douglas B. Ratner. Crew number 3, Robert M. Gray. Jacob E. Mack. Aiden E. Jones. Leland J. Dean.
It is the tradition that leaders like General Doolittle would like to call and get a response from his men, and it is whether living or passed away, and it's a closeness like a family members. So we all had that feeling during these roll calls.
Don Fitzmaurice. William J. Dean. Crew number 7, Ted W. Lawson. Dean Davenport.
It makes you go back, because I remember those fellows who may have died or between reunions. And it certainly makes you reflect on them and their lives, and the fact that they're buddies who will remember them this way. Hard to describe, but it's, you have mixed emotions, I think. And it's, as you say, very reverential ceremony. Serious. They don't kid around about that.
Robert S. Cleveland, here. Crew number 8, John A. Gilder, here. Jacob Ivan, here. Edmund B. May, here. Crew number 14, Kenneth E. Reddick, here. And Melvin J. Gardner, here. Crew number 12, Thad H. Black, here. William E. Powell, here. Walter J. Michael, here. And Homer DeCat, here. Crew number 13, Eugene E. McElroy,
Here. Richard A. Knobloch. Here. Clayton J. McCown. Here. George Barr. Here. And Harold A. Spot. Here. That concludes the roll call. It doesn't get any easier with groups.
No, reading that roster, of course you know everyone, and then I read the name, it really brings no memory back, and you can stall out a couple of times. People you hadn't thought of that recently or so on, and then it brings you back as you've done all that. And it's a real experience for us, I think. And I think whoever's doing it, and the people, the other troops, you pat a shoulder, have a little tear occasion. Sure.
It's very touching because especially Davy Jones was having trouble yesterday reading out all the names of the fellows that had died.
Finally, the day came when they gave us the order to go to San Francisco. We flew across the United States. It took 3 or 4 days. We did low flying most of the way. We were just skimming the treetops and the fence tops.
And I'm sure we scared quite a few farmers. We buzzed their houses and scattered a few chickens and cows and roosters.
When we got to San Francisco, there was an order that we were not supposed to fly underneath the Golden Gate Bridge. But that made it all the more interesting for us. And he threw his crew right underneath that Golden Gate Bridge.
We were supposed to be taken in around 400 miles from the coast of Japan. We got picked up by a picket ship at 650 miles or something out. So at that time we had to launch the gasoline or fuel. We knew we weren't going to have enough gas, but we couldn't do anything about it.
So Doolittle in the briefing that morning said, well, if it happens today we have to go, I'm going to get over Tokyo, bomb our target, bail my crew out, and then I'm going to dive my plane into the nearest good target. He would have done that.
There were several planes that had their props turning. I was very careful because at that time you had to sort of stop and wait until the carrier deck was level so you wouldn't fall into the turning prop.
I got in the airplane up to full speed and the wind was blowing across the deck so hard you couldn't hardly stand up. So we had plenty of lift to get off.
Maybe an hour, 2 hours after takeoff, Maskey, my gunner, who was, 20 years old, called up and said, "Sir, we don't have enough fuel." I said, "That's right."
When we got to the coast, the sun was shining, Saturday, bright and noon, just a beautiful day. There were a lot of people on the beach and they were waving to us. And we're flying so low I could see the expressions on their faces. They were cheering. Once we passed over them so fast, they didn't see the insignia on the bottom of the right wing.
We ran into another Japanese airfield where they had fighters. And 2 of the fighters came right alongside of us, and I think they were trying to identify us. They didn't quite recognize us. And they were so close that I could look them right in the face, and our turret gunner started firing, and he hit both of them. One of them went into a real steep climb and started smoking, and the other sort of wobbled off. He hit both of them, and we didn't see the crash. out the other side, and there were two other fighters on the side of us on that side. The crew hadn't noticed, so I tried to yell at the pilot, co-pilot, but my voice was gone, I couldn't speak. So I had to get out of my seat and went up and turned the co-pilot's head so he could see them.
We've had military targets, we bombed aircraft factories and all storage tanks.
We heard from the radio that American airplanes had bombed Tokyo, and when asked President Roosevelt where they came from, where it took off from, President Roosevelt said Shangri-La to the Chinese. They don't know where is Shangri-La.
Well, I think 4 planes, 11 planes bailed out. 55 men bailed out.
Sitting in the back, it don't have a seatbelt back there, just hanging on and laying, I guess, Bombay, the back of Bombay on the hit. And that's the first time we ever came to, and the water was rushing in the bottom of the plane, so I tried to get out there and finally became conscious enough to realize we were upside down. Plexiglass on the turret had shattered, and that's where the water was coming in. So I was able to push open the escape hatch on the bottom of the airplane and get out there. The pilot and co-pilot were still strapped to their armor-plated seats, so they came to in the water.
Your thoughts of the moment are not definitive. You just face what's going to happen to you the next half hour. And I don't think you dwell on the future very much, at least. When a thing's happening, you don't.
Me in particular, my pilot was one that was executed. And I faced the same tribunal and I was ordered for execution. But somehow someone interceded and they only executed the 2 pilots and the 1 gunner and commuted the other 5 of us to life in prison. And the thing that goes through my mind is, and I don't think I'll ever get an answer, why me? Why him?
I was captured later. Some of us went back to the States, joined new outfits, and in my case, I went over for the invasion of North Africa in the fall, November of '42. And I flew for Jimmy Doolittle, who's general now. I flew for him till I was shot down and captured on Sicily in July of '43. So I spent the rest of the war in a German prison camp.
Well, we wondered, we didn't know what had happened to them. You never know, and I'll tell you one thing, when you're locked up in a cell as big as a bathroom and you spend 2 years and 9 months in there, the first 6 months you've thought of everything you can think of, and from there on out you're a living vegetable.
We crashed on an island. It was in Japanese occupied territory, but the underground, the Chinese guerrillas were operating there, and they were able to get us out of there.
The local guerrilla leaders come to my hotel, asked me if I could speak English. I began to talk English with them. They were so glad that someone can speak English.
The torture chamber they ran us through, the way they treated us, was nothing compared to that day, wondering, and I know why some of the guys went off the trolley. You have to be real firm, you have to get a hold of yourself, you have to keep something objective in mind, but it's mighty tough. Time is a hard thing to kill. He said to me, I'm dying. And I said, you're not dying, Bob, you're just sick. And he said, yes, I'm dying. And I prayed to my God, and he's not doing me any good. Why don't you pray to your God for me? And I said, oh, come on now, you're really being under And I tried to bolster him up, and I think the best thing that happened out of the whole thing was the guard came over and he kept yelling at me to speak in Japanese, so he knew what I was talking about. Because by that time we had picked up a pretty good lingo. He pulled his sword scabbard out and raked me in the ribs. It's a damn good thing you didn't have the sword out of the scabbard, I'd have got killed. And I put my fist down, it hurt, and when I drew away, it was dripping blood. Well, I just come up off my seat and hit him on the jaw and put him on his back and broke his damn jaw. And I think that bullshit meter over than anything else. The guards were all chasing around there, and they were all busy seeing what went on with him. They weren't paying any attention to me. I knew what was coming. I just turned around and walked back in myself.
Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek reported to the State Department and to the President the numbers of Chinese who had been slaughtered just because they helped the Americans pass on through their villages to get to Chongqing, which was their destination.
And then on the 21st, I heard a commotion out in the hall, and I looked out through a little crack in my door, and here's about 6 or 7 GIs. I could see they were Americans. So somebody stopped in front of my door and looked in, and he said, through the crack in the door, and he said, "Are you an American?" Hell, I had a beard coming out of here. I could shake the damn lice out of it. And I couldn't talk. I hadn't talked to anybody for so long, I lost my voice. And finally they opened the door then, and he says, "He looks like an American, bring him out." So they got me out in the hallway, and he said, "Where were you captured?" And I told him, he was a pretty good sized guy, about 6'8", built about like Shaq O'Neal, plays for the Lakers. I said, "I was with a guy by the name of Doolittle, and we bombed Japan on April 18th, 1942. And he turned around and looked at the rest of the troopers that were with him. He said, "You want to watch him? He's clear off his trolley. Those guys were all executed years ago." And I said, "Oh, no, you're not. There's 3 more of them right down the hall here."
They made a promise before they took off from the carrier that when we get to Chongqing, I'm going to throw you fellas the biggest party you've ever had. Well, they didn't all get to Chongqing. As you know, they lost some, and some didn't. Some 5 went to Russia in one crew, and some of them had crash landed and were injured. And then when General Doolittle got to Chongqing, he was ordered back to the States right away. So he couldn't carry out his promise to have a big party. After the war was over in September of '45, he wrote to every living Raider and said, "Fellas, I made a promise. I want you to all be my guests down in Miami on my birthday, December 1945. And that was their first reunion.
The first party we held, Colonel Doolittle was pretty active. You know, he was a boxer, and he could walk on his hands and so forth.
Twice during the 20s, he flew in planes that literally fell apart, and he had to bail out. He was a real, he had no fear, that man.
When we were in the McFadden Doolittle Hotel, at the first one, he got on a swimming suit, and we played follow the leader and dived off the top.
Yeah, things got a little wild.
Pretty heavy. They took over the hotel.
Like the general jumping off the balcony and things like that.
The night watchman almost had apoplexy. What happened that night, they took skinny dipping in the hotel pool.
We play all night long. We would do that all night long.
And he wrote a report to the next man for his relief manager. And he said, "This is the worst night of my entire life. These people were totally out of control." The manager of the hotel gave this letter to General Doolittle. And he apologized, but the man said, "For what you fellas did, You can make all the noise and racket in this hotel that you want to. That was their first reunion. But he paid for it himself. And so the fellow said, boss, it's a great time we've had here. Let's do it again. If you want to get together, let's do it every year. Well, of course, that was December 45. It did not meet in 46. But every year since then, except 1950 and 1966, they did not have, because new wars were going on.
I learned one thing, that be careful what you volunteer for.
How nuts are left. We haven't lost anybody in 2 years. And the year before that, we lost, I think it was 6. So the guys that are hanging on now are making it very difficult for me to figure out who's going to open that Laconia at the end. You know, and all these guys are tough.
And hopefully, 2 Raiders will be alive and will be able to attend the reunion and make a toast to all those departed.
And I said, General, who do you think will be those 2 fellows? He looked at me and he said, I've been wondering who the other guy's going to be.
That 2 drink the black toast, and then they turn around and bow each other, and they both drop dead. They got killed the last day. So much cognac we've been drinking would kill you.
How about that bottle of brandy? Or are they gonna find 2 guys to drink that?
That's like saying, who's next? And we're all pushing 90. Most of us are anyway. Or have pushed past 90.
As we proposed to toast this morning to our comrades, lots of wars since our time, and we're in one right now. And we'd like to include all our young people who are now in Iraq, who will go to Iraq, to include in our toast. Gentlemen, to our dear compadre comrades.
To those who gave their all in success of our mission, and to those who have joined them since, our fellow swimmers, sincere appreciation and gratitude. May they rest in peace. To those who are gone.
If you can come to attention, gentlemen, you're dismissed. Get that bar open pretty quick. I need some strength.
You describe it, I can't. What has happened over the course of the years, we've really maintained our feeling towards one another. And when we see each other once a year or more, we have to, they're just an affinity, I guess it is, that's different.
Somehow they're like sons to me, that group of boys, all 8 of them, and I'm very grateful indeed that the good Lord gave me this wonderful family.
seat next to you. Is there anyone who is retired or senior or a veteran who needs a seat? Please come forward and take an empty seat. Is there anyone who needs an empty seat? Here are a few. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay? Don't be shy. You're going to be standing for another hour. So if you'd like a seat, there are a few extra. If there's anyone else who's interested in having a seat, and if you'd like to sit next to someone who has their hand raised, please come forward and have a seat. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bridget. Incidentally, the staff here at this Boone County Public Library excels. And I've worked at a lot of libraries and presentations, and this is number 10 and 11 in the scale. Today being the 19th of April, this is Patriots Day. And I don't know if you realize it or not, but 242 years ago today, the first Patriots at Lexington and Concord fired on the British for their freedom. And 75 years ago, yesterday, was the anniversary of the Doolittle Raid. I don't want to take too much time here with you folks because you didn't come to listen to me. But I wanted to give you a few ideas and anecdotes of what these men went through, and it might help you in the question and answer period. These guys didn't, this mission, they won't tell you it was a suicide mission, but I don't know what else you could call it, because when they left, they knew they didn't have enough fuel to make it to China. And most of us Christians believe and understand divine intervention. And that was that tailwind that enabled them to get beyond the coast of China. 3 men were killed when they were forced to ditch, though, on the coast of China. 1 man was injured and had to have his leg amputated right there in China. 8 men were captured by the Japanese, and 3 were executed by firing squad, and their bodies were cremated and put under false names in urns. The other 5 were sent to a prison camp where they were held in solitary confinement for 40 months. And that was solitary confinement, and they were tortured every day. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that. And waterboarding is not something new. These men were waterboarded. They had bamboos put behind their knee joints, and the Japanese would jump on them. 1 man died of starvation and malnutrition while he was there, and disease. They were fed 3 dollops, that's an ice cream scoop of rice a day, 1 at each meal. And water that they said was poured over some vegetables. There's the Doolittle Raiders had to remove as much weight from the plane as they could to get more miles per gallon. So in the back, they removed the guns, and they had 2, what we would call broomsticks tonight. We know that they were dowels, but we know we call them broomsticks, sticking out of the rear plexiglass to resemble 50 caliber machine guns to keep any of the Japanese fighters from trying to sneak up on their rear end. In the B-25 at that time, they were all equipped with a Norden bomb sight. And the Norden bomb sight in 1942 dollars was $10,000. The problem with the Norden bomb sight was the Doolittle Raiders were going to come in at 150 feet, go up to 1,500, drop their bombs, and get the hell out of Dodge. So it was not accurate at 1,500 feet. So they removed the Norden bomb sight and replaced it. This is an exact copy of a Doolittle Raider by the name of Ross Greening, who developed this in the machine shop at Eglin Field for a total cost of 20 cents for each of the planes. And this is, to the exact dimensions, a copy of their bomb sight.
I want to tell you one story, and then we'll bring Lieutenant Colonel Cole in. Lieutenant Colonel Cole's crew was rescued by a missionary by the name of John Birch. John Birch was a missionary from Georgia, ordained minister, spoke 2 dialects of Chinese fluently. And he helped Dick Cole's crew escape from the Japanese. Later on, Colonel Doolittle told General Chenot about him, and they recruited John Birch for intelligence work. He performed admirably for the rest of the war. On August the 15th, when the Japanese surrendered, he was sent on a mission north of China, and on August the 25th, Mao Zedong's men captured him and mutilated him. He was the first casualty of the Cold War. And that's enough for me today, and I'd like now to introduce you to the last living member of the Doolittle Raid, Lieutenant Colonel Richard E. Dick Cole. If you have any questions, just speak up. Colonel Cole has not forgotten anything, and he'll answer any of your questions you want.
What we're going to do is if you ask a question, we'll repeat it, his hearing's bad, he'll answer it, and maybe we'll add something to it, okay?
And I have to inform you now, you know, we're going to be terminating this at 8 o'clock. And out of respect for Colonel Cole, not his age, but he needs his rest.
We've had 5 busy days at the Air Force Museum, so.
And we were so honored that he would take this time to come down here to little old Boone County. And I mean that.
If you have a question, just raise your hand and I'll come around to you.
What's wrong? This? Oh. Okay, sorry, I didn't hear it. We were adjusting the mic. What was the question? Any questions? Okay, go ahead.
On your way back to China, how come no foreign country can give you escorts, or did you need escorts?
Let me answer that one. They didn't come back. Well, let me put it this way. They crashed. They bailed out. 3 planes crashed, but the rest of them bailed out, and 1 went to Russia. And then they had to make their way across China, all the way across China, because they were on the eastern coast. And so once they got to Chongqing, which was the provisional capital, the Japanese had already chased the nationalists all the way across China. And when they got to Chongqing, that is where Chenot had a C-47, and he was able to fly them in 3 separate flights out of China into India. Got one here.
What was Jimmy Doolittle like?
Dan, what was Jimmy Doolittle like? This young man over here would like to know what Jimmy Doolittle was like.
Well, I think there's not enough good adjectives in the dictionary. But he was a very friendly man. He wasn't pompous. He believed that he was a team leader, and that's how the word team came into being. And he was very intelligent. He had an aeronautical engineer degree, the first one from MIT. So he was pretty well oriented educationally all through his life.
Plus, he was the best pilot in the world. So. Okay, another question?
Colonel, I was wondering what personal memories you may have of Lieutenant Bill Farrow. I know mission-wise you all were separated, but what about training and R&R? What kind of person was he?
Do you have any personal memories of Bill Farrow?
Yes, Bill was a classmate. We went through advanced training together at Kelly on the carrier. Bill and I were foot in the neck on a cot in one of the companionways. We were both members of the 34th Squadron.
When they went on the carrier, the carrier had its own supply of men and planes. So adding, I think it was about 150 extra people was a burden on them, let alone taking up the whole half the deck with huge bombers. They were medium-sized bombers, but big compared to the fighters. And all of their equipment was down below. And so they slept in any place they could. So they had cots in the companionways, and that's where they were like head-to-head, you know, on the companionway. Some of them slept in the engine room. I don't know what they did with the enlisted guys, but they were scattered all through the areas too. So it was, and they were on there almost 3 weeks, so it was an adjustment. Yes?
My first knowledge of the Doolittle Raiders was Ted W. Lawson's book, 30 Seconds Over Tokyo, that I read about 30 times in the 8th grade. Much to the sadness of my great teacher. I just wondered if you could say something personal about Ted Lawson.
He'd like to know, he read Ted Lawson's book many times when he was in 3rd grade, was it? 8th grade, and he wanted to know some maybe personal things about Ted Lawson. Ted Lawson.
Ted was in a different squadron, and I really don't know much about Ted, or didn't know much about Ted. Part of the time, I believe, he was in Minnesota, where they were doing some of the gas tanks.
Ted was, he wasn't old, I don't think he was. He might have been a year older than Dad, but he'd gotten in the service sooner. Back then, you had to have 2 years of college in order to go through flight school. They changed that in '42 because they needed X amount of pilots to fit the planes. So what they started doing is testing the young men coming out of high school, and the ones that tested better got to go on to pilot training. And that's how come in the end of '43 you have a whole crew of, the oldest one is 20 years old and the other guys are 18 or 19. So that's why their younger crews were later on. Plus these young people were coming off the Depression, and there was no money even out of families that had, he had 3 older sisters that had gone to college. But by the time, he was right in the middle of the Depression, and there wasn't, he had to save up for 2 years just to go to a couple of years of college. And then he worked like 5 jobs at college. So, you know, it was, but that what they needed was more pilots to fit the planes in order to, and mainly for the war in the Pacific and the war over Europe.
Colonel Cole, question is, how were you chosen to be a member of Colonel Doolittle's crew, and what was your initial feeling when you learned that you were going to be Jimmy Doolittle's co-pilot? Who was your childhood hero?
They want to know, how were you chosen to be General Doolittle's in Colonel Doolittle's crew?
Well, the way it was, I was crewed up with another pilot, and I should say our crew was crewed up with another pilot. And according to the schedule or info, Colonel Doolittle was coming into the be commander, and he was bringing his own co-pilot. Well, our crew had about 3 training lessons, and the pilot became ill and was disqualified. So in talking it over with the rest of the crew, I went to they still wanted to go. And so I went to the ops officer and told him the story. And he said, well, the old man's coming in this afternoon, and I'll cool you up with him. And if you do okay, you got yourself about. It turned out to be Colonel Doolittle. All he did was take the seat in the same airplane we had flown into England, and we were the rest of the baggage and so forth that went with the airplane.
The Raiders, they didn't all have, they all trained down at Eglin, and the pilots had to do at least 3 takeoffs and landings, short takeoffs and landings. And General Doolittle did, even though he was an excellent pilot, he says, I'm not going to do this unless I can do what they're doing. They thought that they would have a more attrition rate, meaning the pilots couldn't do it, because it was like learning to ride a bicycle backwards or something. You know, it was against everything that they normally did. And but they didn't. The pilots, they had only 1 or 2 that had a hard time doing it, and even General Doolittle, they were able to, you know, and actually, I don't know that they actually needed it, like Dad says, because when they're on the Hornet, they would, they had a very stiff wind, and it was a very rough day, and it basically threw the plane up in the air the way they, you know, they'd take off on the upswing of the wave, like they do with the fighters, but it sort of threw it up into the air.
Do you think that you could still co-pilot the bombers?
Said, do you think that you could still co-pilot the bombers? I do, I know, well, he did 2 years ago. He flew, he's amazed that anybody would let them in their valuable plane. 2 years ago, he flew the right seat. Left seat, no, right seat, and 3 years ago he flew the left seat.
How did you know that the Japanese had discovered the closeness of the aircraft carrier? In other words, they had to take off earlier than they planned.
Yeah. How did you know that they had discovered the task force out there?
Well, we were accosted, or we ran across a fishing boat that had been equipped with a long-range radio. In fact, Japan had a fleet of fishing boats with long-range radio. They wired back to headquarters, and the headquarters decided that they wanted to wait for confirmation. Well, in the meantime, the Navy sunk Nita Maru was the name of the boat. They had sunk it, and so there was no confirmation coming. And we knew because some kind of intelligence information was that had we gone farther in than before we were picked up, that there would have been a huge Navy battle there. So it was very fortunate that things worked out like they did. Otherwise, we might have not succeeded in turning the Japs around.
The whole crux of it was that they had bombers on the aircraft carrier, because an fighter needs to be, at that time, needed to be within 300 miles of its bombing site so it can get back to the carrier. And the Japanese figured that they would go attack the next day because they thought they were carrying fighters on the deck. They weren't carrying, and that's what's the whole crux of the whole plan was a bomber could carry more fuel, they could get further, but any angle we came from, if we came from China to bomb Japan, you couldn't land. If you came from the Pacific, the best thing they could do was get an aircraft carrier as close as they could. The best thing would have been to be able to come from Russia, but Stalin wouldn't let that happen, even though we were giving them a lot of Lend-Lease planes. Go ahead.
You said that from area where they crashed to where they were able to be picked up was quite a long ways. How long did it take y'all to get to that place?
How long did it take from the time you bailed out to get out of China?
Actually, we were told at the beginning that if we survived the mission, we would get to come home. Well, there were 26 of us that, for some reason or other, orders were never issued. And so we remained there. There were no excess of airplanes, and at one time we had 4 airplanes and 35 pilots. And nobody was getting flying time, and the morale wasn't too great, but they began to put out feelers about establishing the air link between India and China. And so there were 6 of us that decided that we wanted to do that. And out of the 6, I was the only one that stayed with it. And so I guess I could answer your question by 14 months later.
He ended up being, because of being left in the CBI, he became one of the first hump pilots because they were just, which means they were flying the Himalayas. The Burma Road had fallen, and the only way to get supplies into western China to attack the Japanese eastern and northern in China was to fly over the Himalayas, and it's still treacherous flying today. So he became one of the first group of hump pilots flying the Himalayas.
Flying Tigers.
The Flying Tigers were stationed in China, but to get supplies to them had to come over the Himalayas after the Burma Road fell. Yes, it's called the Lunar Trail, because so many planes crashed in the 4 years that they were doing it that you could see them reflecting in the snow. Let me take one from here, and then I'll come back over there.
Where did you grow up, and why did you want to be a pilot?
Pops, where did you grow up, and why did you want to be a pilot?
Well, I grew up in Dayton, Ohio, and there was an Army's first test base that was in Dayton, in the city limits, called McCook Field. And the aviators used to rotate in and out of that base. And you could ride your bicycle over and sit on the river levee and watch what was going on. And you don't know who was doing it or anything or what they were doing, but that was one of the big attractions. The other one was that I had joined the Airplane Model League of America, which had a contest arrangement all over the states. And there were airplanes that were handmade, they were powered by rubber bands. And in the case of our chapter, John Patterson, the owner of the cash register company, National Cash Register Company, had built a auditorium that we could fly our airplanes on Saturday in the auditorium without the disturbance of wind. And that kind of grew into more the fact that I wanted to be a flyer. The other thing was, once a month, a piece, Curtis Hawk, overflew the payroll from McCook Field into the bank out to McCook Field. And I wanted to go after the bad guy.
Yeah, go ahead.
During training, were the pilots told or simulated takeoff carrier?
What did you say?
During the training, were the pilots told that they simulated the takeoff from the carrier?
During training, were you told that you would be taking off an aircraft carrier? During training, were you told that you would be taking off an aircraft carrier?
Well, it was pretty obvious we were trying.
General, he was colonel at the time, but Colonel Doolittle told them not to even talk.
They had marked off the carrier distance on the dry runway, and that's set up a series of little measuring flights. And that's how the Navy pilot that they helped us out gauged his judgment of whether he would make it or not.
General Doolittle told them he didn't want them talking among themselves on speculating what was going on. Some of them were married and their wives were down there. They said, do not talk to anybody. In fact, there was one incident on Eglin that somebody said something and a secretary or somebody spotted it and the base police came and picked him up. I mean, they used Eglin, Florida for a reason. It was good weather and it was isolated. There wasn't, it's not built up like it is now. But the weather wasn't good. They were supposed to get 50 takeoffs and landings. They only got in 25 takeoffs and landings, but it was enough. And there was a young man, yes, right there, you.
What was the hardest part of the whole war?
What was the worst part of the whole war?
I mean, the Doolittle Raid.
What was the worst part of the Doolittle Raid?
I can only answer that from my standpoint, and the time that I believe I was most scared, of course you were scared all the time, but we were at 9,000 feet in the middle of the big warm front, and the gas gauges were on the way down, and you're thinking about what's going to happen when you dive out that black hole. Because we had no idea what the terrain looked like or some of the other things that might have been experienced. That's all I can tell you. I just assumed that the rest of the guys kind of felt the same way.
As a volunteer mission, how did the guys that didn't volunteer think of the guys that did? Did they think you were crazy? What did the guys that passed on it
As a
treat you?
voluntary mission, what did the other guys that didn't volunteer, actually there wasn't any, they all volunteered. They had 24 crews that went down to Eglin. They had 24 crews that went down to Eglin, and so they were all volunteers.
Was anybody that got asked said yes? Was there anybody that said, no, I don't want any part of it?
No, well, maybe somebody did, but they didn't know. They signed up, and then they moved them away from the other units. So they were, the ones that had said they were going were all together.
And all they knew when they were asked to volunteer was, it's going to be dangerous.
Yes, that's all. Actually, it was a bulletin board thing. But even on the deck of the Hornet, there were Navy guys trying to trade them money, offering money for the spots on the planes. And at that time, 5th graders would have gone on the raid, okay? Because the world was really, it was depressing what was going on.
Colonel Cole, this is, you're awesome. This is absolutely amazing. But I wanted to ask you, how long was your flight? How low did you have to fly? And at the moment that you had to bail out, had you ever bailed out of an airplane before?
From the takeoff of the carrier, it was about 4 hours to Japan, and the rest of that, we ended up with a little over 13 hours.
Okay, and how low did you fly, Dad? How low did you fly?
13 hours.
No, how low? What altitude did you fly?
Our average altitude was about 200 feet.
They pulled up to, you want to say that? When you got over Tokyo, what did you do?
We circled around over, the Navy held up a heads up for us, course to Japan. And we flew low until we got close to Japan. On the way there, we veered around 2 or 3 Japanese freighters, because they even had their freighters armed. Entered Japan about 20 miles north of Tokyo, and Fred Bramer, the bombardier, as we cruised in, notified General Doolittle that he had spotted the point that he had picked for his bombing run. Now, our target was the whole northwest part of Tokyo, which was really a bombardier's dream. He could drop his bombs any place. We had the incendiary bombs, and we were to light up Tokyo for 2 reasons. One was to burn up Tokyo as much as possible, and the other was to give the following airplanes some sort of reference on their way, because we were going on down to Nagoya and Kobe, and that's why that was like it was.
General Doolittle gave the pilots choices of places they wanted to bomb. They went for factories and electrical power companies, things like that. Their plane only had incendiary bombs, which is basically a bunch of sparklers. And Japan was almost all wood. And the main reason for the bombing was to let the Japanese people know that their hierarchy had been lying to them, that they could be attacked. And the only way you could do that was to do some damage around them so that their political people couldn't spin it another way.
Colonel Cole, my first question is, did they teach you any Chinese before you took off? And secondly, after you bailed out and landed, how long did it take you to find your way to friendly Chinese hands?
Did they teach you any Chinese on the ship?
Yes, they gave us phrase, if I can remember, basically what it said, I am an American and I need help. They didn't have the patches that later on that the crews got, that they give it to the individual and he could read it. And with the phrase they gave us, and I'm sorry I can't remember it, was the wrong dialect anyway, so it didn't make any difference.
I mean, they all remembered that phrase. I don't remember, yeah, but it's funny because any Chinese we run into, I'd say, Dad, say the phrase, and they'd go, you know, even today. But what he's talking about, later on, they would print scarves that had maps of the area on them. They had nothing. They bailed out with a compass, a 45, a knife. One of the guys bailed out with his record player, okay? But no telling when he set some records with another one of the guys. When he got to the ground, Jordy Manch was 6'6", but when he got to the ground, all he had was a handle. There was no training on parachuting, okay? They were issued a parachute, and I mean, a lot was learned from the Doolittle Raid, and they prepared the guys a little bit better for other flights, you know, like over in Europe and stuff. They gave them a little bit more training, but not much, so.
Colonel Cole, first of all, thank you. And when I was a child, I played with models too, and I built a B-25 Mitchell bomber, and I was wondering if yours was a B-25 Mitchell, and also was the Hornet a Jeep carrier?
What was the model you flew? A B-25B model?
B-25B model.
And what did you say the last thing? Was the Jeep, was it a Jeep carrier? No, it was an aircraft carrier. Okay, sir.
What flying did you do after flying the Hump, and what was your career's work after the war?
After the Hump, I got to come home, and I was home 3 months, and while we were over in China, I got to meet Tex Hill and a gentleman called John Allison, and I was at Tulsa, Oklahoma. When I got a call from John Allison wanting to know if I would like to go back, he and another officer were named commanders of, turned out to be the 1st Air Commando Group. And what that group did is, when it got finished training and so forth, we built 2 runways 300 miles into Burma. And the reason for that was that there had been 2 British attempts and 1 American attempt to invade Burma by, on the ground. It was a big problem of resupplying the troops as they moved along. And the idea of a force to help support the ground troops by air was developed. And so we ended up with 13 C-47s, and we were able to tow 2 gliders. And the first night, landed in Burma. We had engineering, small engineering equipment we carried in with the gliders, and enough protective ground tubes and so forth. And by the time the next day we had a runway, we could go in and land and march.
44. All of our special forces came out of World War II, and 1st Air Commandos was before D-Day, so they were training special forces for D-Day, but the aerial invasion of Burma was the first one.
All right, sir,
Thank you for your service. As a retired teacher, I would recommend to any teachers here or students that your book probably would be exceptional to read. I'm looking forward to it. But right now I'm in the middle of reading a book called Unbroken. And I came across a section about Doolittle's Raiders. And as a sort of educated person, I thought I knew a little bit about the raid. But I was surprised to hear about your sacrifice, that it was considered a no-return mission. I was also surprised to learn that when the planes landed in China, that some Chinese hid many people and helped our soldiers. I'm wondering if that's true. I was reading this in that other book. But that many of the Chinese were murdered as a result by the Japanese because of their heroic actions. Is that what you know, that there were people who were murdered because they protected our soldiers?
Did you hear that?
That was a long...
Okay, number one, they didn't consider it a suicide mission. Like I said, even fifth graders would have volunteered and gone on it because the world was in big peril. Japan was already bombing Australia, and within a few months they were bombing India. They had already taken the Philippines, they were all through the Pacific, and things weren't going well over in the European theater either. So this was what General Doolittle accomplished was unbelievable. First place, he was a very good planner, but there were many things that could have gone wrong. But there was grace of God, it helped him out. They got a tailwind, that carried them 180 miles into inland, that extra miles that they needed. And that's not common, okay? Yes, the Japanese didn't need an excuse to murder anybody. They had already been there 5 years, and they were murdering constantly. But you've got to remember, whether it's good or bad, in that part of the world, China, India, Africa, life is very cheap. And they don't have any problem of killing their own people or another country killing their people. And the Japanese had already been there murdering many people. And yes, they did. They used that as an excuse, but they were probably going to do it anyway. They didn't know that until probably a year or two later. They didn't even know that the three Doolittle Raiders that were captured, that they executed, they didn't know it until a year after it happened.
We have two questions over here.
Okay.
What was the emotion that you had after you heard that the Japanese sunk the Hornet?
Did you know when the Hornet was sunk?
We heard about it long distance wise. I believe it was sunk in July.
No, it was sunk in October. You were still with, he was, the question was, the Hornet was barely a year old. It was commissioned in December or January of 42, and it was sunk the October of 42. 42. Dad was, the news didn't, it took a while to travel around. I mean, a letter home took 2 or 3 months, okay? I don't know if bad news traveled faster, and since that was in that part of the world. But you heard that it had been sunk, right?
Yeah.
While you were in India, right? Yeah.
Did you carry auxiliary fuel, and if so, where on the aircraft?
Did you carry auxiliary fuel, and where on the aircraft?
The only auxiliary fuel I could think of was that just before takeoff, each airplane was given 10 5-gallon cans of fuel that the crew chiefs in the back to pour into the gas tank that, where we were taking out the truck.
They had installed extra bladders. They took equipment off the plane and replaced that weight with bladders and tanks. Some of them were metal and some of them were collapsible rubber devices. But what he's talking about is when they were asked to leave early, they gave them 50 gallons of extra fuel, which got them. Yeah, right. So, I mean, they did it, that's all they could do, okay? It wasn't, it's sort of a joke, but I mean, it was better than nothing, so.
I
Okay,
have a
I'll
question.
wait in the, okay,
Sorry. I was watching a video last night, and it was very scary to me to watch the planes taking off of the aircraft carrier. How scary was that with all the choppiness of the water, the winds that weren't right? And how did you feel when Doolittle decided not to bomb the palace? Were you against it, or did you want to go ahead and bomb that?
The palace, they weren't gonna bomb anyway. He told them not to bomb it because it would unite the Japanese people. They were told, stay away from it. And Tom Griffin's plane, Crew 9, they purposely flew real low. And they knew that plane, so that the emperor knew that there was something going on, but they didn't bomb it. Okay, wait a minute. Was it scary taking off the Hornet?
Well, we had practiced it off of the dry runway, and everybody felt pretty good about it. And, there was no problem. One gentleman took off without flaps. There was one casualty, one of the Navy deck crew slipped on the wet deck and slid underneath the pillar, cut off his arm.
Yeah, cut off his arm, but there's documentation of that. He lived, but he felt that that was nothing compared to what they were going to be encountering. We'll take one more question, but if you really have to ask a question, write it down and give it to the library and we'll get you the answer, okay? I'm going to do it way over there. Yeah, go ahead, you.
Have you been to Tokyo since the Doolittle Raid?
Have you been to Tokyo since you bombed it?
You'll be surprised, yes.
We lived in Japan.
We were there 4 years.
Yeah, we lived in Japan about 5 years after. And we lived out what they call on the economy. There wasn't a base, but we never had any trouble. And, you know, Caucasians don't blend in well. And we never, my playmates were Japanese. I went to an American school, but we never had, in fact, our family's still in contact with one of the families. The other families have died off. So. Fine, yeah, hurry up.
When you made your run over Tokyo, you dropped, and then you headed for China. Did any of the guys get cocky and go back and drop some more?
No, he's asking if any of the, yeah, they only had 4 bombs. No, yeah, they were young kids, and no, that's...
They didn't have any more bombs
They
to
didn't
drop.
have any more bombs.
They dropped all 4 of them at one time.
Yeah, but they also said, Dad's crew didn't, they had General Doolittle, so things went different in his crew, but the other guys, they handed out sandwiches, and they said that they were all excited after they dropped the bomb, so they decided to eat the sandwich, and they had no saliva in their mouth to chew the sandwiches. So they were, it was intense, and but at that point, that's the last part of the instructions that they had. From that point, those 5 men had to decide how things, whatever came up, what they were going to do. So it was by the seat of their pants after that.
All right, guys. Before we leave this evening, I would like for all veterans in the room to please stand, and we'll give you a hand for being here. if you will, one last applause for Lieutenant Colonel Richard E. Dick Ball.
We want to thank you all for coming out.